You might remember us, the ones in the red shirts.
We can't afford guns being the leading cause of death for children and teens in this country.
Whether you're Republicans or Democrats, you can't look away.
We're not going to shut up until we get the change we deserve.
Thoughts and prayers are no longer enough. We need to take action now.
You didn't get this far by saying you can't. You didn't get this far by just being mediocre. You moms demand action, and that's what we demand.
Welcome to Movement Builders, a show about the people ending gun violence in America, all of us.
I'm Kaylin Ford.
And I'm Nikita McDaniel. Happy Black History Month, y'all. Our theme this year is Survivors and Trailblazers, leading the fight against gun violence. And it's never been more important to raise our voices to honor, celebrate, and work in solidarity with the Black advocates who are leading the way in this fight. Because we know gun violence isn't just a public health issue, it's also a civil rights issue. It's a racial justice issue. And we know from doing this work that the connections between systemic inequality, racial injustice, and gun violence run deep. Right, Kaylin?
Absolutely, Nikita. And now more than ever, we need to get loud and amplify the voices of leaders in Black communities doing this work. We need to move more white people from allies to accomplices who will take collective action and not just talk about it. And we need to empower leaders in our communities who are directly impacted by gun violence, because the people closest to this crisis are the people who have the solutions to solve it, always.
And let's just keep it real. We're celebrating Black History Month at a time when the Trump-Vance administration is trying to rewrite history. We're out here fighting to be seen and respected at a time when both the government and private companies are rushing to dismantle our diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And we're raising our voices at a time when so many politicians want to silence us by pretending racism and white supremacy don't exist. We refuse to accept that, because for Black women, resilience is part of our DNA. We have led the fight for justice in our communities and worldwide for centuries. We know what it's like to face every kind of prejudice, honestly. And yet, we continue to rise up and lead, because giving up has never been an option for us.
And we are so thrilled to be joined today by Aaliyah Strong, a survivor of gun violence who founded Time to Thrive in her Atlanta community after witnessing the murder of her fiancé. She is the youngest survivor in Georgia to create a nonprofit dedicated to helping those affected by violence. And we are so proud and excited to have her here with us on the show. So welcome, Aaliyah.
Welcome, Aaliyah.
Hi. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here and to talk to you all today.
Yeah, so I'll get us started. Thank you for giving us a little bit of background about Aaliyah's story. And I also would like for us to hold space for you, Aaliyah, if you want to talk a little bit more about your journey into the gun violence prevention work and share your story from your own words.
Absolutely. In 2022, my late fiance now, Ty, was shot and killed in front of me while we were both at work here in Metro Atlanta. You know, just living lives of the average 20-year-old. I was bartending at the time, and, he was a security guard. And so after he was killed, of course, you don't think about these things when you're young. It's how much does a funeral cost, the importance of life insurance, what does grief support look like? And so all of these things were so new for me. And I just started looking for support, right? Like, funerals are expensive. Grief support, had no idea where to start there. And as I started looking around Atlanta and just trying to find things to help my son and I, there just weren't a lot of options for us. And there's a lot of, obviously, systematic barriers, but we just weren't either eligible or things weren't accessible. And so it made our journey a lot harder. And so through that pain and just what I was going through, I kind of grew angry, right? And so kind of just shifted that anger into advocacy. And what started as first me standing on the sidewalks with signs and posters about justice for Ty and trying to get the location of our job closed down, was recognized by the White House. And I got invited to the White House, just shortly after he was killed. And even when I got there, I really didn't know why I was there, what I was being called to do in that space. And so made the most of the trip. And when I got back, I sat down and I just told myself, like, I'm going to start a nonprofit because I'm just tired of seeing people become victims of their own victimization.
That is so powerful. And thank you for sharing Ty's memory with us. I just want to hold a moment to remember him. And if there's anything else you wanted to share about him with us as well.
Yeah, I think this experience has not only taught me more about just what our relationship was and just life and the journey of the places it can take you, right? I've never imagined, being on this journey, just both of us in our early 20s, just living day-to-day lives, had just purchased a new condo and just living day-to-day. And I think sometimes we take time for granted. And sometimes we take people for granted, right? In your 20s and when you're young, you think you're going to live forever. And so Ty was just very much a gentle giant, would have protected anybody. And so through our experience, not only was I able to see what it was like from a victim/survivor standpoint, but I also was able to look at the other side and say, why is this happening? Why are people getting to the point where they want to take someone's life, and what can we do about it in our communities? And so even in building this organization out, I just realized while I had my own personal tragedy and story tied to gun violence, it's a lot bigger than me. And of course, I couldn't change what happened to me, but if I can change the trajectory of what's happening in community for the next few generations, I would love to be able to do that.
Aaliyah, you are so amazing. Thank you for sharing all that you have already shared. Your organization, Time to Thrive, it provides support for survivors financially, emotionally, and legally.
Yes, correct.
And also you connect them to resources for healing, right?
Yes.
So let's dig in and talk a little bit about this holistic approach that helps people rebuild their lives.
So what we did with our programming is I built it from the inside out. So I started with my own personal experience. What were the things that I just wished I needed or had available to me that didn't cost me an arm and a leg, wasn't going to be inconvenient? And so my biggest thing was, hey, let's just tackle this in 3 tiers. What are the primary needs of survivors? And of course, financial support is huge because a lot of Black and brown families in particular fall into what is known as funeral poverty. And so people are literally going poor as a result of having to pay for funerals.
Yes.
And then with grief support, right?
Yeah.
We can't have a community of people who have been traumatized and then we just expect them to go back out into society and operate normally, think normally, and be able to interact with other people. And then, of course, the legal side, which is the court system, just helping families learn how to navigate the court system. When I was going through our case, I had no idea what was happening in some of these hearings. I was having to Google what I heard, what this meant, with nobody there to really guide me through that process. And so with our holistic approach, I really just said, healing doesn't look the same for everybody. Everybody's needs aren't the same.
That's
what
right.
might help them cope with their loss might not help someone else. And so we really wanted to embrace the fullness of grief and the different ways to show that healing doesn't always have to be linear. And so with our holistic approach, particularly in our grief support program, which is called I Will Thrive, it's a restorative grief support program, which is a 6-week cohort that we host 5 times a year. And we really integrate yoga, art, movement, meditation, healing retreats, just finding different ways of creative expression that families can use on their healing journeys. And I think what makes this support group in particular so strong is that it's a constant wheel of creativity. We give families room and survivors room to express themselves authentically.
Yes.
And then we don't believe in just immediate crisis support, immediate crisis response, because we know that sometimes the aftermath of grief doesn't even hit initially. Sometimes the hardest parts are the year later, the 5 years later, when people start to stop checking on you. And so the beauty in this program is that while you're only in this intensive program for 6 weeks, once you graduate out, you're now a part of our alumni restorative support group. And so everyone who has come through our programs now are in one big group of healing. And this is like our stage 2, where now we actually go on retreats. They have an opportunity to meet with other survivors across the country and just giving them a broader perspective of what their grief journey will look like. Because we don't feel like it's not a finish line. It's always a cycle. And so we want to always have that room to where survivors can come back when they need it. One year, you might have a great year, right? And say, I don't really need this right now. But a year later, a trigger might happen, another loss may happen, and then you're always a part of that alumni network.
That's powerful. Now I'm going to dive a little bit deeper before I pass it over to Kaylin. But I want to point out that this work can be really heavy. I'm sure you feel that heaviness a lot, especially when our families are exposed to gun violence again and again and again throughout our lives. So I want you to tell me what you're doing to take care of yourself as you do this work.
Yes. I'm glad you said that. I was just telling someone this earlier about, I think I've grown to know, okay, my cup is full. Let me take a step back. And I think in the earlier stages of starting this organization, I just felt like I had to be everywhere. I have to do everything. I have to help everyone. And while obviously that's still the goal at the end of it, we also know that you have to be at your best self in order to help someone else. And so for me, that looks like a lot of spa days, a lot of yoga, a lot of locking myself in my closet and just saying, listen, like, I don't want to tend to the dog. I don't want to tend to the dishes. Like, I just need a moment. And I've just gotten very intentional. Like, I take myself on a lot of self-care trips and I literally go by myself. I don't want to have to worry about an itinerary, just something that makes me feel good. And it's so needed in this space because while dealing with your own personal trauma and triggers, you're also now putting yourself in places and spaces where everyone else has to trauma dump on you. And it gets heavy. And so we want to be able to not only make sure that we're able to help these families, and the only way to do that is by preventing burnout. And so, listen, my self-care routine is like, really, really good now. It wasn't at one point, but it took me having a mental breakdown to be like, okay, let me set realistic goals for myself. I have to just accept and realize you're not going to be able to help 1 million people a day. And it's okay, right? Like, you do great work. I have affirmations on my mirror and a lot of journaling and self-reflection.
I'm happy to hear that. You get an A on my scorecard of self-care.
Yes, it has been a journey. And I think the funniest thing I like to joke about is in the beginning, like the earlier stages when Ty was first killed, people used to always say, go to therapy, go to therapy. And I used to tell people, one, therapy is not always affordable for every family. And therapy is not always the answer for everyone and what their self-care may look like or what they may need to pour back into themselves. And so I've always tried to find creative outlets, even for myself. Like, I go to rage rooms. I go to spin art class.
What's a rage room? I like the sound of this.
So the rage room, I know there's a few across the country, but here in Atlanta, we do have a few rage rooms where basically you can go in for an hour, 2 hours, do group parties. And you go in this room and they just have a bunch of items. They give you bats and cups, plates, whatever you name it. And you can just break stuff and throw stuff against the wall. You can bash stuff with like a hammer and a bat. I know it sounds so violent, right? But the thing is, instead of going out into the world and destructing communities, you can come into a place where you can release your anger onto these broken TVs and walls and plates and cups. No one gets hurt, where you have some type of physical release.
That is so important right now because a lot of us are feeling a lot of rage.
Yes. And you should try, if you haven't tried it, I would definitely recommend it to anyone. I kid you not, like, it just feels so good. And so we've even done group sessions, right, to where we bring in a licensed life coach or holistic wellness coach to kind of guide our survivors through what they're feeling when they're in the rage room. So even before they go in, hey, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? What are you releasing, right? Because you also want to go in there with some type of intention. And so to know, okay, what am I trying to release and what don't I want to carry out this room with me?
Yes, thank you for breaking it down. I'll tell you what though, if I don't get to one in my town, the next time I'm in Atlanta, I'm gonna call you up and we're gonna make plans to go.
Absolutely. Please do.
That sounds awesome. You know, echoing what Nikita said, we're living in a really heavy time. And I think a lot of us are feeling frustrated and a little burnt out already with this administration and what's going on, big picture in our country right now. Talk a little bit about what Black History Month means to you in this time and getting loud and standing in your power that you have as somebody who has really changed the lives of so many people as a Black woman in your community.
I get asked this question so much, like, now that Black History Month's here, and I try to think of all these intricate answers and, like, what's the right thing to say, especially in the time we're living in. And now people are uncomfortable, seems like, to even talk about Black History Month. For me, I think the biggest thing I feel during Black History Month is like a connection to my roots. And I think what keeps me grounded during this month is acknowledging Black female activists who've come before me and amazing advocates and civil rights leaders who have shaped the trajectory for me to even be able to do this work in this space. And I think just feeling empowered, right, to recognize, I know sometimes people don't like to do this, but like recognizing and clapping for the resilience within myself.
Yes.
And sometimes being able to even empower and being an inspiration to myself and talk to the 12-year-old me now, right? And like, how have you inspired her, you know, and healed your inner child through that? And so for me, Black History Month will always be one of my favorite holidays because it really, I just appreciate the people who acknowledge Black women in this space. And someone young like me, I'm 27 now. I was 24 when I first started.
Wow.
And this is not how I imagined spending my mid-20s. But just to see the impact that I've been able to create this far, coming from where I was to now, is just really empowering. And I just hope to be able to inspire the next group of young Black women who are looking to become change makers in their communities.
You definitely are inspiring others, and the work that you're doing is incredible. And I can't believe you've done so much and accomplished so much in such a short period of time. And I know you had an opportunity to meet Vice President Kamala Harris. What was that like?
Yes, I was actually at a summit, an event. I was winning a grant award. And it was just amazing, right? Because I just never saw myself or felt like I deserved to be in these spaces, in these places until, and for the longest, I kept saying, like, why me? Like, why is this happening to me? Like, what am I supposed to learn from this? And then I got to the point where I started saying, why not me? Like, why aren't I qualified enough to be in this room? Like, why wouldn't they pick you, right? And so it was just amazing. It was an amazing experience. And it made me feel like seen. And I think that's something that not everyone gets in these spaces. It just made me feel seen and just made me feel like, okay, even being the one person in these, within the millions and billions of people this country, that someone heard me, like someone saw our work and our story. And so that felt, you know, really, really good.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I peeped you on social media and I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a fabulous picture. You're both wearing purple. You both look like so fierce. It's amazing.
Thank you.
It's really incredible. And the work that you're doing is so important. Before I pass it back to Nikita, I wanted to ask you, one of the things that we're trying to work on as a movement and to get our white volunteers to educate themselves about is to understand the connection, the deep connection between racism, white supremacy, and gun violence. Because you can't fix one of these problems without addressing the others. And for our white volunteers to show up as meaningful accomplices and really work shoulder to shoulder with Black leaders in their communities who've been leading the way for decades. How can white volunteers in this movement show up in a way that's meaningful to work alongside Black leaders and to really respect the work that has come before and the work that's being done now?
Oh, great question. And I just have so many such a diverse group of people who I know personally have supported the work that I do. But I think ultimately, like, being able to collaborate inclusively, right?
Yes.
I think we need culturally relevant strategies. And I would encourage, which even now is like with my white counterparts, coming to these spaces and places authentically. Don't
Yes.
feel like you're out of place either, because this technically, while it does affect Black and brown communities, it's not a Black and brown issue.
Right.
This is a universal issue in this
Yes.
country that it needs to be solved, and we need everyone at the table. So I think being willing to actively listen to experiences of Black advocates and being willing to understand their unique challenges and needs. But we can't ignore the fact that there is white supremacy in this country, right? And so if we know that this is true, and I know a lot of people don't like to speak on this, but we have to be willing to advocate together regardless of, and use your privilege for influence, right? Like,
That's right.
it doesn't have to be the elephant in the room. It just, unfortunately, systemically, this is how things have been. And so using your privilege for influence, you might know someone who they might not listen to me, but they might be willing to listen to you. And so being able to not only that, but speak up for the systemic inequalities that are happening in Black and brown communities, I think is the biggest thing. But don't be afraid to come into these spaces and places just because we may say, oh, Black and brown communities or things like that. That leaves no one excluded from this issue. We've seen tons of mass shootings that have happened where it didn't have to do anything with being Black, white, Hispanic, anything. It's just a national issue. And we just all need to come to the table together and work on efforts that are going to push this movement forward and give us the results that we want.
Thank you so much. I love that. And I think that there's so much good actionable advice that we can take forward into this movement with us. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. Have you done any work where you've partnered with Moms Demand Action moms or Students Demand Action folks or Everytown? What would you like to do more of in the future?
So we have had an opportunity to connect with a lot of the individuals in Moms Demand and the Students Demand, actually, mostly on advocacy days at the Capitol and things on that level. We have had an opportunity to go to a few Moms Demand events, but we do want to expand just our support and our network with them. And so a lot of our moms, we have sent to Everytown and Moms Demand for support and services as well, so that they can have a larger network of support. But just constantly looking for ways to build our partnerships with anyone, honestly. We would love to do more with Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action. We've seen some great work from some of the students at Clark Atlanta and Georgia State, Kennesaw State, who are doing the work as well. And so in any way that we can be supported or be of support to someone else, we're always open.
I love that. And I ask that because I think that, and Nikita does a lot of wonderful work with other community partner organizations like yours, but I think sometimes our volunteers want to reach out and want to work together with community partners and don't always know how. So any advice to just like jump in?
Yeah, like literally just call me. Like my number, I'm like probably the most accessible person that leads an organization. We have like almost every social media handle, from TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky. We're everywhere. So yeah, just reach out to us. Like, we would love to have support doing this work, people who just are really dedicated to the cause and just supporting survivors. If people could just post the work that we're doing, I think you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And so just getting more people that can share about the work that's happening here in Atlanta, what Time to Thrive is doing, so that more people can just even are aware that we exist and that there are services out there. Because 9 times out of 10, if we can't directly support someone, we know someone who can. And so, just making ourselves very visible to the public eye, but just call, text, email, write me on TikTok, whatever works, because I'm always on social media.
Yes, we're listening. We're all ears, and we're not just listening. We are ready for some more action, because we stay ready for action this way. So thank
Listen,
you
we
for
are
sharing that.
trying. We are
Yes.
really trying. I think one of our biggest challenges, what I can say for our organization is that I'm sure a lot of people recognize we did grow exponentially quickly, right? But I think that also shows that it is a need because there's not a lot of organizations particularly focused on the aftermath, right? And the
Right.
families. And when we say family, we don't mean just mom, dad, brother, sister. We want the entire unit because not everyone's family structure is a traditional family structure. You have children who are being raised by godparents and best friends. You have cousins, widows, partners, right? Like,
Right.
not everyone is married. And my particular issue was that because of our marital status, I didn't get access to the support I needed. But who defines family?
Right.
And who should get support? And I don't think it's right that we have a system that has put everyone in this box of who can these resources be accessible to when we have so many other people impacted by the issue. And so we're just been working hard to find creative programming that can tackle this head on to support not only the victims, but the survivors, and just constantly trying to make sure that families are not becoming victims of their own victimization. And so we have grown. We're going to continue to try to build out our capacity, and we just hope that people will continue to support the work that we're doing here in Atlanta. And we have shown and proven that this programming works. And we just need people that are willing to step in and support and join us on this journey. So,
Well noted. And I will not come to Atlanta without making sure that I make a stop to see you.
absolutely.
I want to just point out and name that these are uncertain and difficult times in so many different ways. Would you share with us what's one thing that's giving you hope right now?
The one thing that I think is giving me hope, I say resiliency. And I know that's so broad, but I say that because we have overcome so much adversity. One, to even become the organization that we are now, but even in my own personal life experiences. And so even in uncertain times, I know what I'm capable of and what I'm made of, and I'm not going to allow the outside noise to get too loud in my life. And so I make it a point to finish this assignment and whatever God has called me to do, to answer that call. And as long as I can, right? There's things that are going to always be out of our control, but I think really being able to lean into my resiliency and just being very prayerful, right? Because it is very scary and uncertain times, but I know that we do great work regardless of what laws are being passed, regardless of who's the president. Like, we do great work. And we know that the issue of gun violence isn't going to disappear overnight. And so ultimately, the goal would be to put Time to Thrive out of business. Because if families were getting access to services and resources, we wouldn't have existed in the first place. And so that's what gives me hope. And I do know that God wouldn't take me this far to leave me here. And so we're just going to keep going and just continue on being resilient. And we'll just see how far he lets us go on this journey.
Oh my gosh, you just said so many nuggets of wisdom.
Yes.
Thank you for imparting all of that into this space. It definitely motivated me and reminded me, do not let the outside noise, how'd you say it? Don't let the outside noise.
Don't let the outside noise get too loud.
Get too loud.
Yes.
I need a t-shirt to say that. Coming up soon, a t-shirt that says, don't let the outside noise get too loud. Stay focused. And guess what? I always said, as an organizer, I've been a community organizer for over 20 years. And I say, that's my job, is to put myself out of business.
We
should all
the
be
time.
working to do that.
There were so many people sending me the federal funding pause. And my response very blatantly was, what does that have to do with me? What does that have to do with me? God has the final say and this organization in my life. And so when they were saying, oh, how are you going to get support? And I didn't panic. You know, I said, we'll be okay. Like, what does this article have to do with me? You know, because I know what my purpose is. I know what my calling has been, and I'm just going to lean into that.
Yes. You keep leaning into that.
Yes.
We want to thank you so much for being here with us on the show and for you sharing your stories with us. And before we go, is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience and us?
I'm just grateful to be doing this work. Unfortunately, you know, it's like the club that no one asked to go to.
That's
But,
right.
you know, you step in it, you step fully into the role. And so that's what I've done. I will say that we've had tremendous growth and tremendous support, especially from every town and a lot of our local partners here. Our goal within the next year to 2, I'm going to say 2, but I'm really speaking a year into existence, is we are looking to get a survivor safe house here in Metro Atlanta.
Wow.
And we're going to design it to where we have all these houses, right? We have the safe houses for domestic violence survivors. We have housing for rehab, but where are the therapeutic spaces for survivors to come to when the outside noise is getting loud, right?
Yes.
And to be able to come somewhere where it's calming, it's peaceful, they can get away from the day-to-day life, get the support and the services they need. And so our goal over the next year, 2 years, is to get a survivor safe house here in Metro Atlanta. We were going to continue to speak that into existence. If you know a realtor, tell them to call me. But we are super excited. We're going to continue to speak into existence that survivors in Atlanta will have a community center, a safe house to be able to come to and get support from Time to Thrive. And, you know, my favorite quote that I always love to end with is, "Once you heal, go out and heal others," by Maya Angelou. And so that's my quote for Black History Month.
Yes.
Yes.
And guess what? I am manifesting with you that there is going to be a safe house for survivors of gun violence in Metro Atlanta.
Yes.
I see it right now, and it is a beautiful place where people
When we
are
get it,
healing.
you all will get the first invitations. I'm speaking into existence. So we have been just constantly manifesting this, and we're going to make sure that happens. So
Definitely make sure that happens. We're here to support you. What a powerful discussion. I am so thankful that we got a chance to go deep with you today in this way. This has really been very powerful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. I think as a survivor, someone asked me, what is your leadership superpower? And I said, my voice. I think your voice is your superpower. And so there's so much power in telling your story. And you never know who may be listening and be able to heal from your experiences. And so I just encourage everyone out there to do the work, do the internal work first, and then make the work external.
I love that. Thank you so much, Aaliyah, for being with us. We're so lucky to have you. And we're so fortunate to be able to share your story on the podcast.
Thank you.
What a powerful discussion. I am so thankful we got a chance to go deep with Aaliyah in this way.
Yes, and it's given me so much inspiration to carry forward with me in this work and so many actionable ways to really kind of dig into working with community partners in my own community. Aaliyah had so many great ideas.
Yes, I agree. She got me all fired up over here and ready to go. So y'all, you know what we want to hear. We want to know what you think.
Hey everyone, this is Dotan, and I work on the distributed organizing team here at Everytown. I wanted to shout out the nearly 500 of you brand new and veteran movement builders who joined us for our All Supporters call a few days ago. What an amazing call that was. You told us loud and clear that you were fired up to take action, to not give in, and to stay in this good fight in your states and on the federal level and in your local communities, that you will do what we all need to be doing right now, especially during these uncertain times. So thanks, y'all. And I look forward to seeing everyone again soon. Bye.
And a special shout out to Ann B. from Ohio, who wrote to us on Mom Slack that she was very inspired listening to Movement Builders, and it's moved her to greater mom action. Thank you so much, Ann. Thank you again to everyone who's reached out to us so far. We love hearing from you about the topics and stories you want to learn more about. This podcast is your community, so don't forget to check out our previous episodes and share this podcast with your fellow volunteer leaders and team members. And as always, thanks for listening to Movement Builders. I'm Kaylin.
And I'm Nikita. Thank you for all you do to save lives. It's working.